Hello and welcome to this video series featuring select single-player Far Cry Arcade maps that I built and published between 2020 and 2022. This was an excellent creative outlet for me during the COVID pandemic, and I wanted to showcase some of my proudest achievements here, and also walk through some of the creative processes that I used. Hope you enjoy. Chronostasis is a map that I published in June of 2021. It took about a month and a half to build. I wanted to make a sci-fi map that was different than what you would typically think of as sci-fi. I wanted to do something that was set in modern day instead of the future, and didn't have anything like aliens or, futuristic weapons or anything like that in it. There were two primary influences for making this map. The first is a classic episode of The Twilight Zone called A Kind of a Stopwatch. In that episode, somebody finds a stopwatch, and that stopwatch can literally freeze time if he clicks it, and then resume time if he clicks it again. The second influence is a music video by Massive Attack. It's the song Splitting the Atom. And both of these influences have a common theme of time being frozen. And they also have black and white kind of imagery. The black and white is important. I decided when making this map to reduce the color saturation and also shift it more toward the red end of the spectrum. And there's reason for that. If we were really stuck in an environment where time were at a near standstill around us, I imagine that that's probably how it would be, realistically. Light waves would be moving more slowly, so the waves themselves would be longer. That would explain the color shifting toward the red end of the spectrum, and we'd just be seeing less color overall. This map was seriously challenging to build. Look at those budgets right there at the top of the screen. You've got collections, memory, textures, all right at the very edge of their maximum limits, and the lights and visual effects are pushing pretty hard too, not to mention everything else that just doesn't show up here on this screen. So, managing all those things and putting it together in a way that I wanted and the way that worked was very, very difficult, but I'm proud of myself for making it happen. But first, can we just take a look at that title screen there? So the story goes that there is a mysterious underground explosion that you later learn is part of a secret military experiment gone wrong that freezes time and tears a extra-dimensional hole. You are the anomaly. That's the only one that you can choose, anomaly. The other three are turned off. And you are unaffected by what's going on. And that means that you are in a position to do something about it. So the player starts off here in front of this high-tech workbench, and there's a bright light and a big explosion that comes from a certain direction. Everything's in slow motion, but then seems to slowly recover. You don't know it yet, but you are in a private underground bunker at your own home, in your backyard. But as soon as you climb out of this, you're going to realize that time has stopped for the rest of maybe reality, and you're the only one that's not affected by it. Whatever it was that you were doing here, whatever kind of sciencey, high-tech shenanigans you're getting into, that probably protected you from that explosion and the temporal distortion effects that it caused. After you emerge from your bunker, you see a message. Just briefly on the wall, only you. Somebody, maybe, is trying to communicate to you from some other dimension. Maybe that dimension that a new door was torn open to. But then, you find the invaders. Yes, there are bad guys coming on through, and since you're the only one who is unaffected by the temporal freeze, you are the only one who can fight back. Make your way through the town. Here's your house, which is also invaded. You got your neighbors' houses over here and over here. They've been invaded, and you see people in all of them, your neighbors. people in your community, and they are frozen in time. They are just hanging out, maybe throwing a frisbee to their dog, or doing something else. Across the street, we've got a bar that you can go in, and you can see people dancing, having a good time, but bad guys are walking around too. There's a shop, there's a diner, there's a basketball game that got interrupted by this explosion, and oh, here's part of the explosion right there. Look at that. It's bursting out from the ground. And see that beam there? So continuity in stage design is something that's very, very, very important to me as a amateur game designer developer. The angle of the ray that emits from this explosion point points directly to the actual source of the explosion. That's true for all the others, like this one over here. There's a little cafe. So remember how one of the primary influences for this map was a music video by Massive Attack? That music video was directed by someone named Edouard Sellier. So this coffee shop is a little nod to him. But everything's blown apart, and in the middle of it, this poor woman lost her coffee, and possibly her headphones. This guy's paying way too much for coffee, and they're all just frozen in time. Everyone everywhere is frozen in time, except for the bad guys walking around. But in each of these places, if you want to explore, it's optional if you want to explore these, but you can pick up some good weaponry and armor and other goodies in each of these spots. I put stuff in all of them. Some of it in plain sight, some of it hidden. After you're done with the town, make your way past this guy driving a pickup truck with his dog, and actually go to the military installation itself, which is even thicker with an invader presence. As you fight your way up the road, you'll see another explosion burst point, which again is angled directly toward the source of the explosion. There it is. And you come across the military base itself. This is where you have to go. If you want to, you could take a detour to this fun little spot, see where the explosion is bursting out from the ground right there, which you can see from anywhere on the map outdoors. If you go there, you can find some other goodies too. Some trees blown apart, some wildlife thrown off their feet by this burst, and this guy who is maybe hunting some wildlife has a special treat for you if you want it. But anyway, let's get back to the main objective. So at this military base, this is where it starts to get really, really challenging. There's some hard firefights here. One little point that I want to note is this sniper up here in this tower. I designed this so that there is an oil lamp hanging up above here. If you were, say, I don't know, down here by this gatehouse, and you were to snipe that lamp, it'll spark a fire here, and you don't even have to worry about hitting this guy. He's toast. Kinda literally. By the time the player reaches the military installation right around this point, they'll probably notice something that has been going on this entire time, but very subtly, and that is that time is slowing down for them as well. The closer and closer that the player gets to the singularity, which is the end objective, the more that time slows down. This happens very slowly, just little bit by little bit. Things get slower and slower as you go along. And then here, time is really starting to slow down for you. You're getting closer and closer and closer, and you can feel it. All these poor guys were thrown out of their seats, literally. And, oh, this guy lost his coffee too. But that burst right there, that's right close. That's danger zone, because from this control room, you go into the singularity chamber itself, where you see another message from beyond. Sacrifice. This is how you beat the game. Finally, here in the singularity chamber, we have a few more control stations and the actual singularity itself. This is where the portal formed, And here in this room, we actually have an infinite stream of enemy AI that is pouring out of here to attack you. So this is going to be a tough challenge, and time is almost... it's just creeping, crawling along at this point. But if you want to put a stop to the flow of bad guys pouring in, you can do that. You can push this button that this person was trying to reach, and by push the button I mean just destroy the glass case over it, and it'll trigger an explosion underneath here that will stop that flow of dangerous bad guys coming out of here. But the story's not done. You still have to set things right. You have to resume time for the rest of the world, because otherwise all of the natural world is disrupted. You have to walk into the singularity and sacrifice yourself to save the world. That's really it. This map took a lot of effort to build, a lot of time, a lot of trial and error, a lot of getting things just right, and I'm amazed that I was able to make it work at all. But here it is. Here is chronostasis. It works. It works actually really well. So it's probably pretty evident that I like to put a lot of details into my map creations. There are even some details that many players might not even notice. So for example, in this room I have one, see how everything's just kind of being thrown away from this blast point right here, including this hanging light fixture on the ceiling. And I set this light on the inside, the actual light that's emitted from it, to be flickering very violently, but as slowly as the map editor will allow it to go. And that's just to simulate that, yeah, this part of the world is being blown away from this too. It's even angled exactly right. But since everything's slowed down, you might not even notice the effect, but it's there. It's all part of that continuity and that enhanced believability of the player experience. I think that's what it really comes down to, all in all. I mean, as much visual flair and, you know, cool map designs and stuff that I can build and put in here, player experience is the one thing that's the most important above all else. So this is Chronostasis. It was a huge undertaking, and I feel like it turned out exceptionally well. So I hope you like it, and let's take a look at the gameplay, shall we?
PlayStation